Hi, my name is Mia Armstrong-López. I'm a managing editor at ASU Media Enterprise and one of the editors behind the Future Tense Fiction series, which you can read about in Issues in Science and Technology. I'm joined today by Mark Stasenko. Mark is a film and TV writer based in Los Angeles. He's best known for his work on television shows like American Vandal, We Crashed, and Players, and he's the author of The 28th, April's Future Tense Fiction story. Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, it's great to be here.
So to start, I just want to ask you to sort of like set the table and describe in one or two sentences, like without too many commas or em dashes, what the 28th is about.
After this beloved governor is assassinated and the assassin is found not guilty, public trust in the American justice system plummets, and it leads to the passage of the 28th Amendment, which replaces human juries with AI. And the story really follows these two detectives a few years after this, momentous change, investigating a serial killer who is killing the jurors from that watershed trial.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and I think there's a lot of different directions we could go here. But I want to sort of start with the organizing principle of the story, which, as you mentioned, is imagining what it would look like if almost every function in the criminal justice system was performed by AI agents. And I'm curious, like, what drew you to the criminal justice system in particular as an arena to explore artificial intelligence?
So I think a big theme of the story is really trust. It's how we trust each other. It's how we trust and have faith in humanity, and it's ultimately how we're trusting technology and artificial intelligence. I have found myself trusting ChatGPT on things that just a year ago I wouldn't. Like I will ask ChatGPT. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I'll be like, what is a healthy behavior for this? Or is this normal? And instead of going to Google and like cross-referencing my resources, I'm just going to ChatGPT and asking those types of questions, which is a bad habit and a very scary habit. And I'll hear people say to me, like, oh, I heard so-and-so from ChatGPT. So we are starting to use AI as a source of truth, which is a scary, and it's happening subtly. It's not happening in any massive way right now, but it's happening in these subtle ways that is scary. And so I realized that and started to extrapolate on that idea. Like what happens the more we trust AI? Because it's not just about AI becoming more powerful, but it's us giving the technology more power. And of course, I think we all know that one of the things we'll trust AI with in the not so distant future is self-driving cars. That's already in some ways here, and it's expanding rapidly, which is trusting AI with our life. We're going to get behind the wheel, the metaphorical wheel, I guess, of a vehicle that could crash that is being driven by AI. We're going to start to trust AI with medical advice and diagnoses and creating new pharmaceuticals, which again has life or death stakes. But I think the ultimate system of trust that we have right now is the criminal justice system. It relies on a complex belief in trusting a jury of 12 peers to make a fair and unbiased decision. And there's a fairly long history in the U.S. of the criminal justice system not always working, and in a lot of ways, particularly for underprivileged, underserved communities, underprotected communities. And so you can see a world where we start to say, well, we're not doing it perfect as humans, and we have all this trust in AI now. We've relinquished, pharmaceutical creation and car driving and all these other little things in our lives. Why not take it a step further and let AI decide who is innocent and who is guilty? That was kind of the long path to this idea of AI taking over the criminal justice system.
It's really interesting, and sort of what you're mentioning is like it happens slowly and in small incremental ways, and then suddenly it's not that it happens all at once, but then suddenly it's all around us, right? And suddenly our relationship has changed, and we might not even be able to pinpoint, right, like the moment where our relationship with these technologies maybe changed from one of skepticism to one of trust, right? Like you're even mentioning that in your own relationship with AI and ChatGPT. And I think it's really interesting because you sort of have there in the story, there are two characters who sort of have different relationships to artificial intelligence. So you have two detectives, Alex and Elijah, and they each represent sort of like radically different approaches to AI. So like Alex sort of really fully embraces AI without many asterisks, in part because of like a personal tragedy that he lived that he believes was due to human error that could have been prevented by AI. And Elijah, on the other hand, sort of has this sort of relationship of total rejection and total suspicion toward AI, also largely because of some personal circumstances. So I'm just wondering, like, what were you thinking about when you were constructing those two characters and their different relationships to AI? What did you hope to illustrate through that?
Totally. I wanted to give the audience characters who had different views on AI, but that felt very grounded and empathetic in their viewpoint. I hope, totally understand Alex's position. His wife died after a medical misdiagnosis, one that would have been easily caught by AI if it was adopted at the time. And Elijah's son was sentenced to life in prison by this new AI justice system. And so for both of these characters, you can put yourself in Alex's shoes pretty easily and understand why he is somebody who's fighting for more rapid adoption and trust in AI. He sees the lives that could be saved. He's also a detective who's used AI to take down at least what he believes are guilty criminals who are dangerous and killing people. So he has all these reasons in his worldview of why AI is a force of good. And Elijah is seeing his son spend the rest of his life behind bars because of a sentence he doesn't believe is just. He believes a human jury would not have come to the same conclusion. And so you can fully understand why he deeply distrusts AI. I think there's a line somewhere in this story. It's funny, you write it and then you forget the specific stuff. But there's a line somewhere where Alex says, it's not that I trust AI so much, it's that I trust people so little. And I think Elijah has a little bit of the opposite feeling. He still believes, despite everything, in the good of humanity. And so we're also getting that those opposite perspectives.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this also sort of these questions of trust and human error are part of the origin story of the 28th Amendment, which gives us this system, right? Like, as you're mentioning, the story imagines that the 28th Amendment comes along to replace our current Sixth Amendment, which is the amendment that guarantees certain rights in the criminal legal process, including like a jury of one's peers. And so in the story, as you're mentioning, right, the 28th Amendment was born in part from the desire to remove human error or human bias from the judicial process. And afterwards, it sort of replaces all of these functions, right? Like not just the juries and the judges with AI, but also the investigators, also the prosecutors, also the defense attorneys. There's a line where you write that the 28th Amendment wasn't just removing the right to a jury, it was installing the solution to human fallibility. And so the result is a really efficient approach to the delivery of justice, like quote unquote justice. But it's also missing certain elements. And so what do you think that highly efficient approach is missing when it comes to the criminal justice system?
It's a good question. It's a little bit of the question of the story. I don't know exactly why I feel so strongly that if statistically AI is better at certain things, it shouldn't be the choice. But I do believe that is the case. I don't believe we should just trust the statistics of something. There are two things, I guess, that are the most concerning. One is removing the human component, even with all its fallibility, removes empathy, it removes human connection, it removes human trust in each other. And I think more broadly than just the justice system, that is symbolically and literally important in our lives. I've been thinking a lot about like how the internet was a technology that I think has isolated humans from each other. And AI could be a technology that makes humans fear and distrust each other. If we like kind of extrapolate on some of the things we're already seeing. And I see AI saying you are guilty as an extension of this powerful technology that we are granting more power to, making decisions that make us distrust each other more. And then the second piece of it is really the lack of for legal terms, appeals, but in like emotional, in like real terms, like the chance to like admit that something was wrong. If we put AI in as the criminal justice, replace all these components of the criminal justice system, we have to do it under the guise that it is effectively infallible. That's why we're doing it. And so then if you carry that logic through, we have to remove appeals process and second chances and re-looking at things under a new light. And the Innocence Project would lose its muster because this thing has to be perfect. Otherwise, we won't trust it. And by saying it is perfect, we open up this huge opportunity in the worst way to have it be imperfect and give ourselves no way to fix it. So those are kind of the biggest scary things about having AI control the justice system.
Yeah, and one of the, I mean, as you're talking, and one of the questions that I kept coming back to with the story is that I think the story really asks us what we expect and demand in the administration of justice, which is really interesting, right? Like it's an interesting question because in some sense, like what the criminal justice system is asking us to do is I mean, in many senses, right? It's ultimately asking us to evaluate human decisions and human intentions, and that is like a process that does not lend itself to efficiency and does not lend itself to like ones and zeros or like yeses and nos. And there is a lot of gray space there, which is space where bias is introduced in all sorts of harmful and toxic ways. But it's like the alternative also in so many ways like it isn't ideal, right? It's replicating the bias upon which the systems are already built. So I think it's a really interesting sort of prompt for what role does nuance and this sort of like intangible human judgment play in the criminal justice system.
Exactly. It's really, I didn't want to explore it in a way that it was so obviously the wrong solution. I think it is the wrong solution, but I didn't want to explore it in a way that it's so obviously the wrong solution because A, that makes for a less interesting story. And B, I think there is, the criminal justice system is far from perfect. And so like I imagine we will be entertaining ideas around, I mean, in early research, like we are entertaining ideas around certain right now, very, very small, isolated, specific use cases of AI in the criminal justice system. But you can see how the bleed will happen, especially as efficiency and cost savings becomes a bigger and bigger priority in government. You can see how it becomes, okay, let's replace this huge block of something that takes a lot of human effort and replace it with just an AI decision-making process. And that's something Elijah says in the short story. He's like, they get these warrants in like a couple minutes because the two AI systems are able to quickly review everything and cross-check it and grant the warrants. And Alex is happy about that. He's like, look how easy that was. A couple of years ago, this would have taken a week. And Elijah has a pit in his stomach because he's like, there is a purpose of that week for everyone to review it and make sure that we're not taking away the rights of American citizens and make sure we're doing this the right way. There is a purpose to the tedium. And I think in a world and a time where we're rushing toward efficiency, which is of course usually a good thing, but can have its negative consequences, it'll be easy to ignore the benefits of the tedium.
Yeah, first, if it forces us to ask the question, right? Like, in what places is the tedium unnecessary and inefficient, and in what places is it crucial to protect, right, like the integrity of the system? And I think it is, right, like in the response essay to the story, which was written by Elizabeth Joe, who's a UC Davis law professor and an expert in privacy and technology, but like she mentions some of the ways that AI can be used in some ways to like make a more just criminal legal system or start to inch toward that, right? Like you could imagine a world where public defense attorneys who are like way overworked are using AI more efficiently to be able to review, she mentions the cases of like reviewing video, like long video recordings, right? Or like sorting through evidence or helping build a case in this sort of way. So there's ways in which we can imagine the integration into the system that maybe inches us closer to what we want, and then there's extremes that like the ones portrayed in the story that we wouldn't want to inch toward. And just sort of to wrap up here, I wanted to ask you a bit of a different question, which is a process question. So much of your writing is for TV, and this is a short story. So I wanted you to walk us through, like, in what ways is writing for TV and writing a short story like this one, in what ways are they similar, and what ways do they diverge?
The most similar thing is trying to find the most interesting ideas and characters and throw them together. And it's generally I'll come up with the idea first and then try to create characters that are most challenged by that idea. And so in this case, we have Elijah and Alex, and with their deep trust and deep distrust in AI, dealing with the investigation around the sort of the founding of AI in the criminal justice system. I think the big difference between television and short story writing is in television, you still create a lot of this backstory, but most of it you're not putting on the page. You're trying to have come through in these very subtle ways, and it comes through over the course of a season or multiple seasons, and the audience picks up over it over time. The thing that's really exciting about a short story, especially when it's an idea with scale like this one, is you can talk about some of the history. You can take a break from the immediacy of the story for section and talk about the history of the criminal justice system. You can dive into characters' backstories in a way that's really exciting. And so I find that if I have a story that I think the backstory is really rich and enlightening to the characters and kind of important to the theme, especially in this case, it's fun to at least start in the short story format to kind of get all that out and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's fascinating. Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about the 28th. And I hope everyone will go read the story and its accompanying expert response essay, which are both available in Issues in Science and Technology at www.issues.org. So, Mark, thank you.